into the message. Terry, if you could pull up for me, please, 2 Samuel chapter 24. What time is it? Because I don't want to keep you real long. We'll try to speed through this. Just to give you a little backdrop before we actually begin reading in that chapter. In the few chapters prior to this, we see that King David was having some great victories as the king of Israel. He was defeating armies left and right. God was doing some great things through the king of Israel, and he was giving Israel some really great victories. But in the midst of all that, and even with David's most sincere heart, David got a little arrogant and he got a little prideful. And we're going to see what happened with David when that happened. Let's go ahead and read verse number 10, and then we're going to skip down to verse 18, Terry. And David's heart condemned him after he numbered the people. The pride that arose in David's heart caused him to take a census of the people. And he began to think inside, it's because of all these mighty men that all these great feats are happening. And for just a moment in time, David forgot to give thanks to where thanks really belonged, and that was to the God of heaven. So he numbered the people, he took the census, and immediately, the Bible says, as soon as he did it, his heart condemned him because he realized in that moment, some pride has stepped in, and I've taken credit for what belonged to God. So David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. But now I pray, O Lord, take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have done very foolishly. In the next couple of verses there, we see that the prophet Gad comes to David and he says, David, God has come to me with a word for you. There's going to be a consequence for what you've done, because sin never goes unpunished. No matter how sorry we are, there's consequence. I want you to hear that again. No matter how sorry we are, there is consequence to sin. There's no escaping it. We've already read earlier in David's life, whenever he had the wife of Uriah the Hittite, there was penalty for David's sin. David was sorry. David got on his face at the threshing floor for 7 days, would not be comforted, would not eat. He was mourning and grieving the sin that he did, but you know what? It still cost him the life of that child that was birthed to Bathsheba. David was a man of great bloodshed, a lot of it at the command of the Lord. But that still did not erase the fact that there was bloodshed that David committed out of the command of the Lord that caused him the penalty of never being able to build the temple. His son had to come behind him and do it. No matter how sorry we are, no matter how sorry we are, there is always a consequence to sin. Some of those consequences may last us a lifetime, like with David. He never was able to build that temple. He had to see that relinquished to somebody else. And some punishments are temporary. Some consequences only temporary. Gad came to David and he said, David, you have sinned. Pride has welled up in your heart. Pride is one of the big ones with God, like the biggest. Remember Lucifer? And he said, okay, this thing has raised up in your heart, David, and you've sinned against God. God's heard your prayer. God knows that you're sorry, but there's a consequence. Now, God has given you 3 choices, and you get to choose your consequence. Can you imagine? Like, God is coming to you, and he's saying, no, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. You choose. None of them are pleasant, but I will give you the choice, David, because I know you're really sorry. You guys can read that part of the story on your own. Finally, David looks at Gad and he says, listen, I trust the Lord. I am truly sorry, and I love him with all my heart, and his mercies are kindness and love towards me. So whatever consequence God chooses for me, I'll receive it. And God did strike him with a consequence. Now let's get on down to verse 18. And Gad came that day to David, and he said to him, now David, go up and erect an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. So David, according to the word of Gad, went up as the Lord had commanded. Now Araunah looked and saw the king and his servants coming toward him. So Araunah went out and bowed before the king with his face to the ground. Then Araunah said, "Why has my lord the king come to his servant?" And David said, "To buy the threshing floor from you, to build an altar to the Lord, that the plague may be withdrawn from the people." The plague was the consequence of the sin. Now Araunah said to David, "Let my lord the king just take it and offer up whatever seems good to him. Look, here are oxen for your burnt sacrifices, and threshing implements, and the yokes of oxen for the wood. All these, O king, Araunah has given unto you." And Araunah said to the king, "May the Lord God accept you." Now I want you to listen to how David responded, okay? In other words, Araunah is saying to him, "David, you don't have to buy the threshing floor for me. Man, you're the king. Take it. Whatever you want. There's utensils in there. There's oxen in there. Everything you need for a sacrifice for God. It is yours. Take it." But listen to David's response. David said to Araunah, "No, but I will surely buy this threshing floor from you for a price. Nor will I offer any burnt offerings to the Lord my God with that which cost me nothing." So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 shekels of silver, and David built there an altar to the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. So the Lord heeded the prayers for the land, and the plague was withdrawn from Israel. God, we just thank you so much for the reading of your word. And God, I pray as we talk tonight about the cost of worship, that you would instill something new in our spirit. God, that something inside of us would come alive tonight. That we would understand the price of our worship that is precious. God, and that we would not be guilty of trying to offer you something that cost us nothing. In Jesus' name, amen. David said to Araunah, "No, I'm not taking this threshing floor from you. I'm not taking the oxen from you. I'm not taking these utensils from you, because far be it from me that I stand in the place of worship before God, giving him something that cost me nothing." My question to you tonight is, what is the cost of your worship? What have you paid for your worship lately? Think about that for a minute. Had David stood in that place and slaughtered those oxen, given them as a sacrifice unto God, what really would have been going through David's mind at the time? Do you think he would have even felt the sacrifice? He would have been offering another man's sacrifice. And David said, "I'm not going to stand in the presence of Almighty God offering a sacrifice that's not mine to offer. This sacrifice is going to be mine. It's going to cost me something." And my question to all of us is, what is the price of our worship? What is the cost of our worship? You know, whenever I think about Kristen and Boo, because all of life is worship. We talked about this morning with the kids over at Children's Church. They had some really great answers for worship. All of life in our obedience is worship before God. How we live is our ultimate worship. But when these kids decided that they were going to sacrifice their summer, possibly even sacrifice, Boo had a decision to make, because a lot of you guys know already, he was invited to the National Fine Arts Competition in not in Louisville, it's in California this year. It was going to be a great expense. And before he committed to the summer camp, he knew, okay, we've got fundraisers we need to do. We need to work to raise this money if we're going to get you there. I mean, he's worked hard to get to that point. And he had to sit down and evaluate. If you go to give of yourself, it is possible that that's going to cost you your trip to Fine Arts. When Kristen had to sit down and think, do I want to go to work, and do I want to be able to have the money to put towards things that I want to have in my life, or do I want to sacrifice that? Will it cost me something to go? Many of you in here tonight, it cost you even to be here. We're not really in the height of football season, but let's think about that for a minute. When we're in February, on the first Sunday night of February, for a lot of men across this country, it costs them something to get in their car and to come to church, to be in the house of God. For some of you women, Alan will pick on you for a minute, that love when calls the heart. I always have to say it that way. I can never just say when calls the heart. It's when calls the heart. It cost you something to get in the car and to come be in the house of God tonight. When you're young and the sun is out and you want to go to the beach and you just want to soak in the rays and Sunday's my only day off. To get in the car and come to the house of God, it's costing you something. It may cost you more than your time. It obviously cost you the gas to get here. We can figure that in. But maybe when you get here, there's a special speaker or a special need that arises in the congregation and you hear about it. And God is nudging you and He is saying, I want you to give towards that need. Make sure that that family has food in their pantry tonight. It may cost you out of your pocketbook to really worship God. What has your worship cost you lately? Because it is a big sacrifice to worship God. For the sake of time, I just want you to write this down. Exodus chapter 19 and Exodus chapter 30. I do want you guys to read this on your own. If you get the CD, you can pause the CD, read these passages. In the book of Exodus, you're going to find out about the laver that was set out in the courtyard. Because no man could enter into the temple that they didn't prepare themselves, because God took worship very seriously. When I read that story, I'm reminded of a common phrase that, and I think we've all been guilty of it. I think every minister who's ever held a microphone in their hand, we've all said it. Come just as you are. And while that's true to a point, I believe that is come just as you are to the point of salvation. But once we receive Jesus into our life, it can no longer be come as you are, because there is a golden laver that we have to stop at to enter into the holy place to worship God. Because worship has to cost us something. I think we lead people astray when we constantly say, just come as you are. Just come as you are. We see that philosophy really widespread throughout the church in general because we've gotten a really lazy view of God. We've become too buddy-buddy with God and we have forgotten the holiness of God. Just come as you are. God understands. Just come as you are. And while that is true to a point, we have forgotten to tell people, listen, you have got to clean up your act because you're coming into the presence of the holy God and there's a laver you have to walk through to get there. In Exodus, you also see in chapter 30, in chapter 19 of Exodus there that I gave you, when you read that, you're going to see the story of whenever God was coming down to meet with the children of Israel. They were out, camped around the mountain. He had just brought them out of Egypt. Mighty, powerful display to bring them out of the land of Egypt. And God wanted to meet with His people. He's like, man, I brought you out to bring you unto me. I want to meet with you. But He told Moses, He said, take today and take tomorrow and get the people prepared. Tell them to wash their clothes, get them clean, and get them ready, because I'm coming in their midst. He goes on to tell them, but tell them not to get too close to the mountain, because I, the Lord, am holy. And if they get too close and they touch this thing, surely they will die. And at those words, the children of Israel got so afraid that they said, Moses, no, you go hear from God for us, and then you just come back and tell us what He said, because I can't do that. I can't be in that kind of presence of something so holy. So you just go hear from God and come back and tell us what He said. I'm sorry, I got news for all of y'all. I love a good sermon, but I'm going to meet with God. Because I want a personal word from God. I want to know what God has to say to me. God loved the children of Israel so much that He wanted to meet with them. Just think about that. What if tomorrow you got an invitation from the President of the United States and said, I am coming to Lady Lake and I want to come to your house. Who, in their right mind, well, I mean, there may be a few people that don't like the current president, but most people would probably say, oh, wow, the president wants to see me. And you know what you would probably do? Search the closet, find the best thing you had. If you didn't have anything, you're going to be hitting Kohl's, hoping for that 5 off of 20 sale. And you're going to be getting yourself ready. Maybe a new pair of shoes. I can remember my mom telling the story of Mima. She's not here to get on to me, so I'll tell it. She used to, whenever Mom was little and y'all were going to have people coming to visit, my grandmother was so particular about her home. There were times she even went and got new draperies to put on the windows, because somebody special was coming. Yeah, when we're talking about coming into the presence of God, God wants to meet us here. And it's, come as you are. Just come as you are. When is the last time your worship cost you something? Because God expects our worship to cost us something. And I know some of you are probably looking at me crazy. Oh, that's the Old Testament. We don't have to do that anymore. Grace abounds, and now we can just come to God as we are. But I want you to look at what the Apostle Paul said. Because this thing runs throughout Scripture. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. His holiness that extended at that mountain is the same holiness that extends in this sanctuary. The same God who was the God in the wilderness is the same God who is the God in Lady Lake. He changes not. And his expectation of holiness and right living in us still remains. And he expects that our worship cost us something. Before we read what Paul said, I want to give you this example, and I know we're all guilty of it. So every single one of you, I believe, can probably relate to this, even probably from the youngest person in the room. Have you ever gotten a gift at Christmas that you really just didn't like? But instead of taking it back, you thought, oh, I have a Christmas party to go to next week. I'll just wrap it up and take it. And whenever the person opens the gift and you're just kind of sitting there wondering, are they going to hate it as much as I did? Or will they really like it? But you really don't care because it didn't cost you anything. It was something you got and whatever, I'll just pass it along. And I want you to think about God. In that moment, when you come in this place or sit home and choose not to come in this place, or when God has whispered something to you, a word of obedience that you are not doing, I want you to think about that for a minute. Because as God opens your package of worship and he looks down and he's thinking, I know they got this at the last Christmas party and they brought it to me. This is junk. God would never say that. Are you sure about that? Because my Bible says that when Jesus had a conversation with his disciples, this was what Jesus said. Those people worship me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And I don't receive this sacrifice. It's junk. It's garbage. It costs them nothing. Because it's a bunch of hypocritical, empty words that cost them nothing. They haven't died to the flesh. They haven't learned to live by my precepts and my ways. What they're trying to bring me is garbage. It costs them nothing. So again, my question to all of us is, what has your worship cost you? Let's look and see what Paul said in Romans chapter 12. And I'm going to read it to you out of the New King James first, because this is probably how most of you guys know this verse. 12 verse 1. It says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. That's how most of us know that verse. Which is your reasonable service. Your whole body, everything. Prepare it. Get it ready. Take today. Get the sin out. Wash it up. Prepare your body a living sacrifice. Okay, envision the children of Israel at the foot of the mountain. Spend today, spend tomorrow. Wash it up. Get the clothes in the washing machine. We're getting ready to meet Jesus. Put on your Sunday best. Come dressed to the nines. Get in the presence of God with your best. Here it is echoed in Romans. And it says, listen, consecrate yourself a living sacrifice before God, because you are not your own. You were bought with a price, and you have the responsibility to take care of and nurture your temple with utmost 100% care and concern, because it's not yours. It has cost you something for salvation. Salvation is not free. That's another one that we say all the time. Salvation is free. It is the free gift to man. Really? Because salvation cost Jesus his life. And if you are a true disciple, salvation is going to cost you yours. It's really not free at all. Not if we're serious. It costs us everything. We're not our own. We are bought with a price, Galatians 2:20. But I want to read you Romans 12:1 from the NIV. And this is how one translation says it. You got to remember now, they take the Greek and Hebrew words and they do the best they can to put them in our English vernacular for us to understand. And I love this translation of Romans 12:1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, as holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper act of worship. Worship has to cost you something. When we take that one word, this is your service, versus this is your worship. Worship has to cost us something. And my question to all of us again tonight as I close this up, when is the last time your worship really cost you something? When's the last time that you had to get out your pocketbook? When's the last time you sacrificed your time? When is the last time that you sacrificed your best outfit because your neighbor down the road had a fire and they had nothing to wear? This is where the rubber meets the road, my friends, and this is the real cost of worship. When is the last time, and obviously for all of us, but I'm talking to those of you that will see this on YouTube. I'm talking to those of you that will listen by CD. When is the last time that you gave up something on a Sunday night to get in the presence of God? Has your worship cost you something? I think for all of us in this room, I think that we're pretty much at that place where, yes, we're willing to sacrifice. But what about tomorrow? That's where the rubber really is going to meet the road. Because we can get into a legalistic, ritualistic thing about coming to church and, oh, we got to be in church. I was telling the kids this week, we were having some good discussions about things that happened at camp. And I was telling the kids, I said, I can remember a time whenever I was attending church and Steve and I were newly married. We were going to church in Interlachen. And matter of fact, I was even teaching the Sunday school class, the 5th grade to 5th and 6th grade, I think it was, at the time. And there were times that I would get in my car and I would drive to church and I would teach that Sunday school class and then get in my car and leave before service because my husband had to work and he couldn't be there with me. There were times that we would get in the building, and one of the times that stood out in particular because we were talking about modesty and the way that women dress and this and that. And I can remember one night showing up to church on a Sunday night. Steve was going to have a Christmas party, and I can't remember if the party was before or after service. That's kind of irrelevant, but I had worn a black dress that was pretty tight-fitting and way too short for anybody to be wearing, much less to church. And I walked into that building, and I sat there because this was my religious duty. This is what you do if you say you love God. You go to church. My heart was not even there. My heart was thinking about the party that we were going to be stopping at on the way home. And although we did not drink the alcohol, and although we didn't do the language that everybody was doing, and although for all intents and purposes people knew we had left church and that we were Christians, I had to stop and evaluate myself because my worship was really costing me nothing. It had become such a thing to do. Because this is what you do when you say you love God. You can sit in a church building Sunday after Sunday, Wednesday after Wednesday, and your heart still be so far from God because your worship is not really costing you anything. When you don't have anything to do on a Sunday night, oh, let's just go to church, nothing's up. But then next week maybe some family comes from out of town who've never been to Disney World, and they're going to jump in the car and go. You have a choice to make. Am I going to sacrifice visit to Disney with my family? After all, they're family. I see them once a year. Or are you going to let that cost you something to get in the presence of God? When you're sitting around in your living room, there's been many times that God has done this to me where maybe the family was watching a movie together and God would say to me, come, I'm beckoning you with me. Come, spend time with me. And I would have to get up from the couch and leave my family to go spend time in my prayer closet, just me and God. It cost me something. That is the real nitty-gritty of our faith. So as I close this up, my question to you one more time is, what has your worship cost you lately? Because if it hasn't cost us anything, it really isn't worship. God, I just thank you so much for the word tonight. And God, I know sometimes the word can be so hard to hear, it's so challenging to our flesh. Because God, all of us would rather do the fun things that our flesh is crying out to do. God, I think that somewhere deep down inside of us, we all have a little Israelite who is saying, you know what? No. Preacher, you go hear from God. You do the sacrifice. You get the word from heaven. And then come back and tell us, because I'm not quite ready to really let my worship cost me it. God, I thank you that even in these challenging messages, that God, you are so merciful. God, even in the fact that you give us these messages displays your mercy and it displays your grace, because you love us enough to warn us and to teach us and to beckon us to come higher. God, that is all because of your love, and it's all because of your grace. And I thank you tonight, God, that you are so patient with us, that where we have gotten it wrong, God, where maybe our focus has gotten a little bit off, that you are so patient, and that you are extending some mercy tonight, beckoning us into your presence, because you truly long to meet with us. God, our sacrifice of worship, it's not punishment. It is the best gift of all that we can actually give to ourselves, is to prepare ourselves to enter into the presence of God, to enter your holy presence where your glory abounds, to be in true fellowship with you, God. And God, I thank you that you love us enough that you long to meet with us. And God, I pray that as we get ready to leave this place tonight, Lord, that God, these words will reverberate back in our mind as things come up this week, as things come up maybe next week, as we're maybe faced with the challenge even next Sunday. Do I miss church for this event, or do I sacrifice that to get in the presence of God? Then I pray that these words will reverberate in our mind. God, that we would know how much you long to meet with us in the holy place, so that your glory can envelop us, God, and can change us and can bring us to new levels in our relationship with you. I think that we all need to take just a moment to examine our own heart and to ask, to be honest, and to say, God, when is the last time my worship cost me something? When is the last time that I was willing to sacrifice something to give you worship? Maybe for some of you, God has been beckoning you to a place of fasting, and you haven't even been able to sacrifice the fleshly desire for food in order to get to that place alone with God, to seek Him with total abandonment. God, I pray that we will be a people always willing to sacrifice to be in your presence, God, because there is no place like it. There is no place like being with the God of heaven.